Hey there folks, back here for Real Features, one of the very few new reviews for Season 10, and we're kicking things off today with The Shape of Water, which is set during the Cold War in 1963 with a mute woman, played by Sally Hawkins, having a love affair with a creature from the Black Lagoon type of creature. Try saying that 3 times fast. Considering this is done from Del Toro, who was the guy who gave us the Labyrinth of Dr. Parnassus and the first 2 Hellboy movies, this should be intriguing. Plus, it's nice to have something different once in a while. In about 2 hours, you will know my exact opinion. Until then, MJ out. Right, as I explained in what will be explained in episode 211 of Ask the Night this week, the reason the videos have not been coming as thick and fast as they should be in the last few weeks is I've literally just been getting over the flu, and I do apologise outright because this particular strain of flu has been wiping the floor with people, including yours truly. So I'd just like to apologise outright for people that have been waiting for these spoiler reviews of The Shape of Water and Black Panther respectively, and I'm going to make you wait no further. So I'm going to get on to the spoiler review of The Shape of Water. I'm going to get down to the story. Although there are a lot of similarities to this, and from Splash, which I think Splash was a 1983 movie. Let me just check Wikipedia. No, 1984 was a year out, excuse me. There are similarities in where they get the creature out of the aquarium, the test facility to be able to get it out to freedom, in the same way that the creature that's played by Doug Jones is capable of intelligence, understanding, and being able to love in a similar way to how Daryl Hannah's Madison was in Splash. I just like like I say, although there are similarities, Del Toro has made it different enough to be able to put its own spin on it. And here's the thing. You can only try to be as original and as different as you possibly can, because at some point you're going to be inspired by something and have little things like homages or these subtle wink-wink moments to it. But in terms of the tone of this movie compared to Splash, this is a lot more mature, dark, and it's got more of a world sense of realism to it, where Splash is mainly intended as a fantasy romantic comedy. And, you know, particularly with that, you have Tom Hanks in his youth. He was just basically a good-looking young adult back then, being paired with Daryl Hannah, who I think she was just more or less getting started in her career at that point. It was almost like The Little Mermaid if it were real, if you follow me. In this situation, it's a role reversal where the aquatic creature is the male and the female is the human counterpart. And it's interesting where you see this bond between what Doug Jones is just credited as the amphibian man, and Sally Hawkins plays Eliza Esposito. And what is really impressive with Sally is how she is able to convey so much emotion just through her facial and body language and just through her signing. And it's in a similar context to how Vinnie Jones had to do so much with so little when he was cast as the character Sphinx in the 2000 Gone in 60 Seconds movie. The only difference is Sally Hawkins is a little bit more better looking than Vinnie Jones, but to each their own. What else to touch upon with regards to acting? This is the first movie I've seen Richard Jenkins in since 2010's Let Me In, and this guy never fails to put in a decent performance. Here, he really has this sympathetic supporting role to Sally Hawkins' character, where he's basically there for her. He's almost there as one of the few human interactions that Eliza has with people. That, and besides, let's see, and Zelda, played by Octavia Spencer. I actually like Octavia. She just has this bubbly sense of charisma, where she literally brings a lot of personality and a lot of life to the movie, because she's just got such a big charismatic character about her, and she basically acts as a mouthpiece for Eliza particularly whenever they're being interrogated by Michael Shannon's character, who never fails to be a douchebag in virtually any movie he's in. 2013's Man of Steel, notwithstanding, where he hammed it up a Zod with, "I will find him!" And he's never going to live that down. But that's just the thing. He sells it well, and it's in a similar sense to the late Dennis Hopper. He played such a monopoly of villainous heel characters, and Michael Shannon's no different. The character of, let me just read real quickly, of Richard Strickland. The guy just has zero compassion for the creature. He only sees it as a science experiment of what he's being told to do by his superiors, just to cut it up, for the Cold War efforts and what have you. And he's just basically an unlikable and unredeemable jackass from start to finish. And the bit where you see him snap off his reattached fingers, ugh, nasty. And whilst we're on the subject of unpleasant moments, whilst I understand the importance of keeping in tone with the theme of that the amphibian man is a wild animal, I was not a fan of one of the kitties losing their heads. Again, I get the point of what they're trying to go with there, but as somebody who loves cats, that made me cringe a little bit in the theater. So, but I like the fact that, like I say, the creature kind of recognized he had done something he shouldn't have done, and he places his hand on Richard's head and sends a surge into him, where not only the cut mark had gone off of his arm. What is his character's name? As Giles, he not only heals his wound, but he also allows the guy to grow his hair back, because the guy was wearing a wig for most of the movie, because the poor guy was balding. And I think that was the creature's way of giving back. So, the creature, although very wild and primal in some places, it is able to have enough sentient intelligence to recognize, to give back when he's taken something away. And it's an interesting dynamic where Eliza has affections for this creature in the same way that, a regular male and female human would have for each other, but they often say opposites attract. There are bound to be a lot of people that say this is not their thing. Hey, it's 2018, each to their own. it was a different setup for me, but when you think about it in some ways, this is no different to a mermaid story, where, particularly if you look at 1989's Disney's The Little Mermaid, where they pair up, I think it's Prince Eric, if I'm not mistaken, who was voiced by Christopher Daniel Barnes, who would go on to be the best voice for Spider-Man ever. Seriously, he was the best one. You know, and having him paired up with Ariel, I mean, this is basically more or less the same context. The only difference is the amphibian creature is more amphibian than human. But there's enough humanity in the creature to be able to recognize these little things. And I like the art style, where it really, you really feel like you're in the early 60s, particularly with the way that security monitors are set up. It's almost like a more advanced version of the security surveillance monitors that we're seeing in Captain America: The First Avenger. It's just got this very chrome, mechanical look in a facility. And the same thing with the cars. I mean, particularly when you see Strickland in his teal-covered 1963 Cadillac, which, ooh, that thing is beautiful. They really captured the essence of that, and particularly including the rather antagonistic dynamics, where the cafe waiter tells a couple of customers to leave, and even tells Giles to leave, when Giles kind of makes a platonic advance on him, because as far as his perception was concerned, the cafe bartender waiter, he thought he was gay, because he's gay as well, and that was not the case, and tells him to leave. If that were done today, there'd be so much wrong, and so many things they'd have to change with that script. But because this is done in the 60s, where that's just how society was at the time, you can't do revisionist history like that. So it's just reflecting how things were at the time. In a similar context, when you look at the first Back to the Future movie, where certain things are said to, particularly to Goldie Wilson, when he says he'll go to night school and run for mayor, and Lou, the cafe owner, makes a rather irresponsible remark. Again, if that is said today, there's going to be hell to pay for that. But because it's set in the 50s, you know, you have to be authentic to how things were at that time. And even Random DCE has covered similar bits and pieces like that, particularly during the segment with Biff Tannen's Goons and Marvin Bear and the Starlighters, where insults are exchanged from either side. Again, it's just how things were at that time. And, you know, Universal were just being authentic, but they were doing it in a way whereby they recognize, you know, that is wrong, but it's not one of those things where you can have a revisionist history. It's just the way things were. So, in terms of the realism, they definitely got a sense of what things were like back then, particularly in that particular little segment. I love the score, particularly where they include Renee Fleming's "You'll Never Know How Much I Love You," and I really like these classic, I suppose jazz is the best way to describe it, or these very kind of old school movie soundtracks, where you get a type of tone and demeanor in that type of music you just don't really see these days. I mean, it still exists, but not in a way that is as plentiful. And in a similar way, it's this, particularly with the musical arrangement. It's very similar to something like Bing Crosby's I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas. It's got that very tender feel in the arrangements, and again, I love the score that they provided for this. You know, there's not really much more I can say with regard to this movie. Some people probably got weirded out by the sex scenes, particularly with the way Eliza floods the entire bathroom just so her and the amphibian man could get intimate. But it's done in a way whereby it's more romantic and sensual rather than sleazy, and I think there is a misconception whenever they do love scenes in movies today. In some movies, yeah, it's done just to say, hey, we're appealing to people that just want to see a quick thrill, where, particularly the way this is represented, it's done more as a thing of love rather than something that's just amorous for the sake of. And there's not really more I can say about it than that. And, you know, Del Toro, with the way that he directed that, it, like I say, it made it more of a sweet thing rather than a perverted thing, if that makes any sense to you. So, when it comes down to it, I'm going to give The Shape of Water a must, because it's a very different type of movie, and I think this actually got... Actually, did it get an accolade? Yeah, it actually won 4 Academy Awards for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Production Design, and Best Original. I could not agree more. The production, considering this was probably done on a budget, let me see. Yeah, this was done with just $19 million. You know, in Hollywood today, that's chump change, that's peanuts. And the fact that they were able to get such a high quality movie made, you know, not something, you know, not when you look at something like one of the MCU Marvel movies where they've spent 150 or 200 million dollars on that, and this movie that's done on a budget and it just has such a high quality look to it, and that gets 4 Academy Awards, and something like, maybe like Iron Man 3 or even Captain America Civil War doesn't get any awards close to that, and they're made on a bigger budget than that speaks volumes. So Del Toro, you're awesome, and so is this movie. This movie gets a must. This is the second of a double bill from Real Features today, and as you can see by the title below, Black Panther. This will be interesting to see what they can do with a big live-action feature for the character, considering his only live-action feature to this day is having an appearance in Captain America Civil War. Considering this will be the Black Panther's first feature movie, with him as the feature role, because as his only role up until now was featuring in Captain America Civil War on the right of the pro-registration of Tony Stark. So be interesting to see how Chadwick Boseman does with this role, and there's such an array of talent in this movie. It's going to be good, you know it. Anyway, in 2 hours you will know my opinion about Black Panther. MJ out. Now this was, because I did this as part of a double whammy feature, or double feature, whichever your preferred interpretation. I just like to go with what I think feels good. I'm just going to answer the big question that everyone's probably asking for my opinion on. Is this a good movie? Oh, heck yes. Cast, writing, score, the soundtrack, particularly Kendrick Lamar and SZA, her vocals in All the Stars, it's enchanting, to say the least. The art style and the set design for Black Panther, it's mesmerizing. I haven't really, and particularly with the soundtrack, I haven't heard anything done of this high quality with regards to making a soundtrack and set feel as authentic as possible for an African story since The Lion King. And that soundtrack and that score for that movie in '94 was beyond amazing, and I like what they've done with that. I can't really see who did the actual scoring for that, but you know, whoever did the score for that, you know, full marks to you. Music, Ludwig Göransson was hired to produce the score for April 2017, and again, I was just blown away by the soundtrack. Let's get into the story. In some weird way, there are a couple of parallels similar to The Lion King in a way whereby the main protagonist is ousted from his home and then has to go find a ways to reclaim his place, not only as the rightful ruler and the king, but the protector of his homeland. And that, like I say, there are parallels that are similar. And Chadwick, he really does a decent job as T'Challa and the titular character Black Panther, even down to the accent. I mean, this guy's from South Carolina, if I'm not mistaken, and he really does a decent job of really replicating the accent needed to be the ruler of Wakanda. And you know, this is the first movie I've seen Angela Bassett in years. I think the last movie that I saw her in, let's see, because she was in a movie in the late 90s. Hang on. Let's see, Angela Bassett filmography. Let's see, because I know she was in a movie with Ralph Fiennes. Yeah, it was a movie that was getting close to the year 2000. It was a movie where you could actually put this visor on and actually play back someone's memory that had been recorded onto these discs. And it's just a very interesting movie, and to see her in this was quite rewarding because the woman has not missed a step whatsoever. I will say though, I felt like I had more sympathy for Michael B. Jordan's character, Eric Stevens, aka Killmonger, because his father had been killed earlier in the movie, whereas T'Challa's father was the one who took out Eric's father, and Eric, you know, feels like he has an axe to grind and feels like he has a rightful calling to the throne. And it's just, you know, you could see the emotion in his face with the way he conveyed this, particularly where you see him show all the scars on his upper torso, where he had, you know, recorded all the kills that he'd done, which I thought was not only great attention to detail for the character's part, but for Michael to have that done. I mean, that's dedication for an actor. Didn't see enough of Lupita's character. She plays as Nakia, and I've been a fan of this woman for quite a while. There's just this very quiet elegance about her. She doesn't really raise her voice that often. She just lets her, I suppose, civil delivery do the talking for her, and she's, you know, not only a beautiful actress to look at. She, you know, her acting performances, even though I've only seen like maybe one or two of her movies, there's something equally captivating about her performance as well as her beauty, if that makes any sense to you. So I was happy to see that. This was also the first movie I've seen Forrest Whitaker in probably since 2013's The Last Stand, with Arnold Schwarzenegger's first movie since coming out of retirement for being the governor of California for 8 years. Because the last movie he did before Last Stand was Terminator 3. Oh, the pain. Make it stop. Make it stop. I apologize. Andy Serkis kills it, as ever. I'm amazed that he's not only able to be a chameleon physically with a lot of his roles, but he's able to be a chameleon vocally, where he puts on the accent as Claw. There is a reason why he's one of the best, and he's one of the best motion cap actors, even though he didn't do any motion cap acting in this, but it's always fun to see him what he does. Martin Freeman, who reprises his role as CEI agent Everett K. Ross. I'm amazed at the American accent that he was able to put on. There are a lot of actors, whenever they go to put on an American accent, it sounds kind of forced and contrived. With Martin, it sounds like he's replicating it, but he's doing it where it feels organic and natural, and it's not being contrived. One particular example of one actress who was trying to do an American accent, but it just didn't sound good. The movie 3 from 2005. Kelly Brook was trying, but the accent just kind of sounded a bit So there are examples where some people have done it before and it doesn't sound as good. I get similar criticisms on occasion where some will say, you sound American, but you don't sound quite American, but you don't sound quite English, so, you know, I take it for what it is, so, you know, it's all good. But yeah, again, Freeman, impressed with what he did. The special and visual effects are mind-blowing, particularly with the vibranium visual effects, particularly whenever they pull their lips down and there's these vibranium markings in there particularly the effects where they use vibranium to, I suppose it's having virtual reality where Ross is able to fly some of the ships even though he's not in one of them, or to Oh, what was the name of particularly where Shuri, who's played by Letitia Wright, the stuff that she's able to do from her lab in Wakanda, that's a young prodigy right there with the things she's able to come up with. The vibranium technology in some way, with the way that it's able to go over T'Challa's suit, or to the way his shoes are able to change their appearance. It kind of reminded me of the symbiote in some ways. If you think back to Spider-Man the Animated Series, where Parker and Eddie Brock respectively were able to alter their appearances through the use of the symbiote, the vibranium coating in the clothing, for lack of a better description, has those similar qualities. The only difference is the vibranium doesn't make you into a psychotic killer, because that's what Venom was. But like I say, visual effects are just wow. I'd be a little surprised if this movie didn't get at least nominated for a visual effect award, because damn. There's not really a lot more I can say. I mean, writing, although like I say, there are little elements that I've seen that are borrowed from pieces of The Lion King, particularly where you go to see T'Challa talking to his father. I suppose in a sense where you're trying to reach out to the stars just to be able to talk somebody for guidance. There are low elements of that, but I think for the purpose of the story that it was going for, I think it really does help. Because sometimes we do look up to the stars and say, what have I got to do? You know, I need your help. So, story, again, although there's stuff that's borrowed from The Lion King, I really liked the pacing. There were no characters that felt they were generic or anything. One thing I do like, particularly with regards to the cinematography, when they're at the casino in Korea and the camera goes down from the balcony down to the gambling floor and then back up to the balcony, like it's done as one take, seamlessly doing it as such. I thought that was just, you know, superb editing that I would like to be proud of. So I was really impressed with that. Like I say, cast were amazing, although the most standout cast member was Michael B. Jordan. There is something about that actor. He really kills it whenever he goes for these performances. There's something extra that he brings to it. It's a similar stance that he was one of the few saving graces of Fan Four Stick. I've seen that movie and I personally think it's a big pile of shit. But he was one of the few things about that movie that was like, you know what, he was actually trying. He was actually trying to make something decent out of it. Like I say, the soundtrack and the score and the soundtrack, amazing. And like I mentioned, with Kendrick Lamar's Stars Above featuring SZA, really touches the soul a little bit. I mean, her vocals in particular, they're just so enchanting. I could go yammering on and on. I'd like to, but even now my my throat is still suffering. So I'm just going to simply say Black Panther is a must. I was I had an idea that this movie would be good. I wasn't expecting it to be this good. So, if you haven't already seen Black Panther, what are you waiting for? Go out and watch it. I don't know how much longer it'll be in the theaters for, but rule of thumb is the more money it takes in, the longer it stays in the theaters. I mean, you only need to look at Star Wars Episode 3, the last decent Star Wars movie, to know that, because I think that movie got released, let me have a look see, because I think that was mid-May of 2005. Let's see. Oh, I'll be danged, I was right. May 19 would have been better if it was on May 4. You'll know why I'm thinking that. And this movie was still out around the time of my birthday, around in early July, and I thought, oh, guess it's still taking in money. Good for them. But yeah, I've got reasonable confidence that Black Panther will still be in theaters for at least a good while. Whether it will still be in theaters when Avengers 3 is out, that remains to be seen, but we'll see. Until then, folks, this has been MJ Knight signing off from this double feature for Real Features, and once again, I thank you all for being so patient and understanding, because the flu is not to be sniffed at. Not one single bit. So, until then, go watch some good movies.